Let's go now to our reporter Ben Strang, who is in Whakatane. Ben, what is the latest there following the family's briefing by the police?
Yes, it sounds like it might still be going. Mike Clement, as I mentioned earlier, was here at the Whakatane District Council building, said that we're about half an hour away. That's turned out to be a 7:15 media briefing at this point. He's headed back down to the wānanga where the families are. Families aren't talking to us at the moment, but based on what's happened, I mean, the meeting started at 4:30 and it's lasted for more than 2 hours. So they've obviously been grilling officials on what's going to happen, how they're going to get to the island to recover their loved ones. They haven't really had this opportunity over the past few days, and I guess that's the point. And the reason that we've had Stuart Nash here and Mike Clement has been brought in from the gun buyback to take over operations because communication hasn't been good with the media and it also hasn't been good with the families. They've been very frustrated, and this, I guess, is their opportunity to ask some questions, and it's pretty positive that it sounds like an operation is going to happen in the morning.
What do we know about that operation? Who potentially will be involved, and what kind of risk are we talking about here?
We don't know an awful lot yet, but we do know that the rāhui is still in place on the island, so it's still forbidden to go there. That has to be lifted, so they're going to have to take a member of the iwi, a kamatua, to lift that, and they will have to accompany them onto the island. We know that will happen. It's expected that will happen first thing in the morning if they go out onto the island. Otherwise, we've had Air Force people, we've had Navy officials, we've had members of the Army all coming in to the District Council here over the past couple of hours, holding maps and that sort of thing, where it looks like they've drawn where the bodies might be. We know where the 8 bodies are. Mike Clements told us that earlier today. So it's just a matter of getting out there and trying to get in and out as fast as possible.
And what do we know of the turnaround? Because obviously this morning there was a press conference which the police said it was too risky to go ahead with this. Within a matter of hours, we find ourselves in a different position.
Yeah, well, that's the big change that's happened today. We just saw Nico Fournier, the GNS volcanologist who talked this morning as well. He just left the Whakatane District Council building. He said nothing has changed on the island since 3:30. So the amount of activity on the island continues to escalate. There's a lot of tremors underneath the island. So that's quite interesting. He said there's still a 50 to 60% chance of an eruption over the next 24 hours. So they're tossing a coin on whether there'll be an eruption in the next day. So the risk involved with going to the island certainly doesn't seem to have diminished. But like I said earlier, I think there's a bit of a fear that if it rains on the island and there's ash around these bodies, they could be essentially encased in the ash and the recovery would be much harder. You'd basically have to dig them out. So I think these are the sorts of things that the police are weighing up when deciding they can get out onto the island. And bear in mind the helicopter pilots who had been out there on Monday trying to pull people from the island, so they think it would only take 20 minutes or so to get the bodies off the island, but you'd be jeopardising perhaps the ability to identify the bodies when you come off if you rush the process.
Is there any feeling that the mood has changed there in the past few hours? Obviously, as you mentioned, a number of these families were incredibly frustrated about a paucity of information, and Stuart Nash, really came out publicly and said it wasn't good enough. So has the mood shifted since news of the recovery and also since Stuart Nash made his comments public?
Yeah, it certainly has shifted here. Stuart Nash was very, very strong last night when talking to the media, saying that the communications from the police simply hasn't been good enough, that he thinks they could do a much better job, and they need to essentially sit down and take all of the questions and portray all the information that they can to families and the public, and make sure that we get an idea that they're doing all they can to recover the bodies and do the best job that they possibly can. So that's been very clear. The families, I think, are happy that there's movement now. They voiced their concerns this morning to officials when they met at the local marae here in Whakatane. So, yeah, I think there's a lot more positivity, and there's certainly been a lot more activity over the next hour. We've got another member of the Army just heading into the district court now, so there's certainly a lot of movement, a lot more activity. I mean, at 4:30, we were earlier than that, when we found out that they were, about 3:30 p.m. when we found out that they were planning this operation. We thought that this was going to last for, a week or so, based on what GNS was saying about the volcano. It's showing no signs of easing off the level of activity. So this has sort of come out of the blue and really escalated quickly.
Appreciate your time. Thank you for joining us. That's Ben Strang, our reporter on the ground in Whakatane.